Hey everybody, Speedy here with Bennu Studio Inc. Back to continue the subject on the series Tales from the Drafting Table. We're at episode 15 now. We're going to be moving back into the color study aspect, as per last episode I got a lot more of the pencil refinement done. So let's get after it, huh? It's going to be a good one. Okay, so moving back to color study, and I took some time and kind of got an opportunity to upgrade my filming equipment, so I took the time to do that. And but yeah, I'm taking and continuing the color study here, and like I said, it's also partly to help me flesh out how I want the background to tie things together. So I'm working on each individual character primarily, and in this one I get to do like kabuki theater, like samurai dude, which is really cool, you know. um, and like his mouth and a little bit more on the building and things like that. And you know, my color study process is also to see when and where and whether my ideas as far as color and color format are going to work out in the overall. Like, one, I'm working from reference work, and so it's already got colors that it has naturally. And when I initially laid this all out, all the reference material out in how I wanted to compose it, in the beginning, I wasn't really thinking of how all the colors would work together. Like, would one side be overloaded with a color and another side, you know, also be saturated? That can draw the eyes in places you don't necessarily want to. And so when I do finish up the drafting part of this process, the tail end of that for me is making notes before I go and take it to its final medium of where I want to adjust the color. And so in the color study part, I stay true to what the reference material color calls for. But I may find, after I finish the color study and I finish this drafting process, that I want to pull back on some of the color, like tone it down, even compared to what the reference material shows. One thing that will not change will be that it'll have a lot of heavy black in it, because that's the style of the comic books from that era. Um, so even what we're seeing here in my drafting process isn't really what the final is going to look like. The final will look pretty different, actually, because this is a draft, and the color study part, it's also a draft. So, you know, I'll complete the color study, then at the end I'll make a lot of notes about the changes and approaches that I want to pursue for the final. And so while I was making this, I kind of already realized and started making some notes of places where I like the element and where it places, but I don't like the oversaturation of like the same colors all in one area. So I may, as my notes that I wrote, I definitely want to tone one of the two down, or drown out one, or make one a little more faded or more on the grayscale than true color, like it is in the reference material. And I think with the mouth, I'm probably going to saturate that down and really soften that up a lot, so that the, kabuki theater dude, he gets a chance to pop more. Um, the violent kind of growling mouth in red is valid, though, because I mean, he's at a point in the overall story and in the montage itself where he's hit his rage limit, and red is definitely the color of rage. Um, or I may go more towards a faint scarlet with the samurai dude. I wrote notes about it, and I'll go through that process when I end this draft. At the conclusion of the subject on this particular series. It's just everybody's brain works differently. Mine is hypervisual, but when I'm working through the study part, I'm not trying to achieve what's in my final vision. I'm experimenting a little bit, and making decisions on whether or not I like all of the placement. So the other option is if I'm saturated in place, but I still want both elements to be bold, I may be relocating some of these elements. The main thing is going through the study, um, getting my hand trained for rendering them a second time, the final time, and also moving things around on the final to where it still holds the composition and the theme, but you know, color wise is more balanced. And also, I do the color study so that once I complete all the main components of it, that's when I decide what the backgrounds behind them should be like. And since there's just snippets of backgrounds behind these characters, um, it's probably going to be examples of the city of Mandapur, um, from both sides, like from the traditional side of what it looked like back in the OG day, which kind of fits Shinjin's character and the story arc of tradition versus modern, and Western honor versus Asian, Japanese honor, and those kind of elements. And there's still a few other characters I need to draw in. Um, he's kind of in this weird relationship situation who is a ninja chick. That's the best way to put it. And in episode 16, I'll get into having like the ninjas more, and I'm looking forward to that part. That kind of is going to be in some of those gaps too, because they're kind of like stealth, hiding behind buildings, hiding in shadows, that kind of thing. And so I'm definitely going to kind of have some of them spilling out of the side of the building, the castle that's at the center of it. And in 16, I'll be moving towards finishing the castle and moving down to some of the other main characters studies that are in it. But this everybody's brain works differently. That despite the fact that mine's purely like visual, and I mean to the extreme. So when somebody describes something or makes a joke or talks to me about things, I visualize it. It's a moving picture in my head of what they're talking about. I don't see words. I don't hear words really. I hear music, and I see visuals. Visuals like almost like a inner film kind of thing. And I mean, but like everybody's brain works differently. I mean, some people, I suppose, because I don't know, but I've talked to a few people, and some people don't see anything inside their head at all. So I've learned to approach people when I want to share ideas, and first thing I ask is, do you have a visual mind? Because I have come across people who have no visual mind at all. It's a blank in there, and doesn't mean they're not thinking. It's that their brain wave functions inside their mind differently, so they may be having auditory, meaning that they hear words and those words are repeated in their head, and then their own thoughts are added to it, kind of like an inner monologue conversation. But I mean, some also, like, there are people who have nothing in there. They have no inner conversation. Those are the ones that freak me out a little bit, because it's kind of like when I was younger, I thought everybody had an inner monologue to kind of narrate what they were seeing and kind of give them feedback inside their head about what they're seeing and what they're hearing. But I have come across people that don't. It's just a void space. And I have to admit, to me, that's a little freaky. I can't imagine not having the ability to see inside my mind. But that's also kind of relates to my learning, and the reason why I do these drafts and these color studies before I go into a final. I am at a skill level where I can just boom bust something right out without putting the study into it first. But when it's complex like this, and it's somebody else's work that I'm doing I guess a tribute to, I'll always go through this process of doing a color study and a pencil draft and a color study, so that I can get as true to them and their style as possible, so that I make a really good tribute to them. Now, this is some early artwork by Frank Miller, who's like one of my like faves. He's not the number one, but he's really high up there. And as far as the comic book world, yeah, he's an awesome dude. He's like him and Alex Ross and Kubert, him and his dad. Um, there's some really amazing ones, honestly. Um, I mean, I'm mostly mentioning Western ones. I have a lot of like Japanese ones, but I try to be polite. I can't pronounce their names correctly, and I don't want to butcher them. So, I don't. But like, the auditory side of it is that yeah, I see moving pictures and I hear music and tone to go with those pictures, and that's where like I get the feeling of what the story in my vision in my inner mind is telling me. So I really don't get words. I don't hear words or any of that. Now I can poetically throw words out and instantly write haikus, and I'm very poetic and I write songs and so forth. But I don't think about them first. Words just go. I just let those flow. You know. Um, in a way, though, I'm also if I'm only thinking music and I'm really not thinking of a visual. I mean, it had times where the screen kind of in my mind. It's still visual even with music, and that sounds weird, but when I have a song idea or something like that flowing in my head, I still see it visually, and it's actually weird. Is the best way to put it. I see the platonic shapes, but they vibrate to the frequency of the sound, if that makes sense. And so they kind of morph and change shape into other platonic shapes, and they go in and out of the different platonic shapes. So when I'm imagining music and I'm thinking in musical terms and I'm trying to write music, yeah, I have a little geometric dance going on that fits the tone and the frequency is the best way to put it. I'm seeing frequencies when I think in terms of music, and and I sit down and I close my eyes and I play to try to time myself up to what the pulse, the the colors, the transmuting of the shapes to the rhythm is like. So for me, music is still actually weirdly visual, but it's like I said, it's just the platonic solids. It's just the basic shapes. Um, my weird science brain is obsessed with string theory because of how I visualize music. I don't think it's coincidence. I think that string theory's got a lot of merit. And I don't see it really in opposition of relativity. Not entirely. I think it could potentially be that bridge between, like, maybe, you know, how quantum field theory and quantum, mechanics and things on the micro level don't behave the way they do on the macro level. But we still get results on the macro level that we can all experience and engage in. So I see string theory as possibly a bridge between why quantum is so contrary to relativity. But I don't think string is like contradictory to relativity, like a lot of people think it has to be one or the other. Um, Three is extremely important in our universe. Um, a lot of people who see dualistically aren't understanding polarization and observation. What I mean is, okay, let's just say as an example, hot and cold, right? Well, neither of those are actually different technically, their temperature. Now, they're different degrees of the same thing, but if there's not an observer, then they don't exist. So I kind of see the whole like duality thing kind of wrong. I don't think things are dualistic. I think they're polarized. But without the third component, the observer, They just aren't. You know, you can't know that water is hot without engaging with it, thus observing it, and you can't know if it's cold. You can infer and you can guess, but unless you engage with it, you don't know. And technically, you can change temperature from hot to cold and cold to hot because it's the same thing, it's just temperature. So it's not really dualistic and it's just polarized. And the third factor is the observer. And that kind of gets into the weird quantum thing of the idea that particles, when not observed, do nothing. You know, that gets into a lot of weird science nerd stuff, but that's part of being a creative, at least for me, is that on some level you're kind of experiencing nature inside your mind like a little differently. And I think that a lot of people kind of forget that science and art have a connection. Um, our earliest artists were involved in metallurgy. That's where a lot of pigments actually came from. So they were involved in metallurgy, they were involved in chemistry and alchemy, naturally. Um, that's why I encourage alchemy. And I'm not talking alchemy like the woo woo spiritual, I'm talking literal precursor to chemistry. Chemistry is a refinement, but I think there's still value in the source of chemistry. Alchemy technically was the source of all of our sciences, and I think people forget that while Aristotle fathered all of the sciences, it was because he was empirically obsessed with codifying everything he found. you know, so naturally, his obsession to codify every single thing he found and to chronicle everything he found and get as much data as possible birthed all these specializations off of basic alchemy that he understood at the time. And alchemy was really important in like early Kemet and Greece. Super important. And actually, I've been kind of noticing it was also very important with the early Hebrew tribes. It seems to me that most of the ancient, Bronze Age and pre-Bronze Age civilization was obsessed with alchemy. To them, they didn't divide the sciences. Aristotle divided the sciences, and the rest of us have been running along that direction. But, I mean, I kind of think, in a way, they had an advantage of them not being divided. They had more interrelation and interconnectability when it was all just a singular. And once Aristotle kind of applies all this data accumulation and this empirical approach to nature and reality and all those things and, creates all these physical sciences, um, they start becoming a little too specialized in that this is just a modern observation, but it just seems to me that each field of science thinks they can solve everything by themselves with their own science, and that's totally wrong thinking. They need to be played off of each other, played against each other, countering each other, but also cohering with each other and having correspondence. And you see, alchemy holds all that together. And for me, one of the biggest disappointments was hearing Neil Tyson deGrasse say that there's no need for philosophy anymore. That's so wrong. That's so utterly wrong. Okay, philosophy asks the questions, and science answers those questions. But also, philosophy asks whether we should do it or not. That's pretty important, too. Think about nuclear weapons. We invented a way to destroy in an unfathomably massive kind of way. And we gave ourselves lots of excuses why we should do it. And we didn't use any philosophy to decide this is a place where we need diplomacy. We need everybody on the planet, enemies and friends alike, to agree that this is a place we shouldn't go. I mean, I can understand wanting to have the gnosis, but I think once you let that particular genie out of the bottle, then you've created a future where we're constantly putting fires out, because we kind of played with the ultimate fire and we can't put this one out. The only way we're ever going to actually really put that genie in its place, because we're not going to put it back in the bottle, is for the species to evolve. And so I always did like the idea of the doomsday clock, because I really think that, like, we really did start a timer on our own species. It was okay, caveman, it's time. Now you can annihilate the entire planet and all life on it with your toys and your tools. Now you have no choice. You have to mature. You have to evolve and mature. If you don't choose to evolve and mature, you're going to for sure destroy yourself. Where before, that was kind of fantastical, the idea that we had the ability to utterly destroy life totally on the planet. Used to be fantastical. It's not, and it hasn't been my whole life. I remember going through the nuclear drills over there in Europe, It was farcical. It wasn't going to save any of us, so I really don't know why we bothered. It should have been like, hey, hold on and watch this. It's the end. Um, but, I mean, I didn't mean to, like, drift that far on this. I mean, mostly I need to be thinking about, like, the color study thing, but there's not much to say about it. It's about my visual approach. If it's something, and you will see on the next subject, the Aristotle and Plato one coming up, when it's something purely out of my head, I have a completely different approach to drafting and to color study. I don't spend quite that much time on the drafting and color study process, and I don't get quite as detailed, because I like, when it's purely coming out of my head, I like to flow with it in the main medium that it's going to be finished in. And I know for sure now that the Plato Aristotle tributes, that's going to be in watercolor. I absolutely know it's going to be in watercolor. Or at least it's going to be washed. So it could still end up in oils, because there's a technique with oils where you can go really loose and almost like doing watercolor, using a lot of linseed oil and things like that, and thick, thinner, and so forth, and medium. But I'm almost 100% certain the next one upcoming is going to be some kind of wash, some kind of fade, most likely watercolor. That's just the kind of feeling I get off of it. Not going to apply the Cavaggio technique. That I'm going to save for a different subject coming up, which I'm still kind of keeping under wraps. On Sundays from now on, I'm going to post what my weekly schedule looks like as far as uploads and future projects. Like, I am going to go ahead and list what the rest of summer looks like for Tales from the Drafting Table, the subjects I'm going to tackle this summer. I'm just having a challenge with my third subject. It's already locked in that I'm going to do it, but I don't know what to call it. I'll admit that. The third one is a little more personal than any of the ones I've done on here, aside from the fourth subject that I'm going to do is also fairly personal. It's a tribute and dedication to my mentor, Ken Lawton. But the third one is it's a piece for the studio itself. I do a lot of art to help me visually kind of shorthand reinforcements of my overall vision. And so that third one is very unique. That one's going to be mixed media, but it is going to be a painting. And so the third one will be the first, like, traditional painting at the easel, and the third one will absolutely be using the Cavaggio technique. I'm a big fan of that. I'll describe that technique when I get to that subject, because I know a lot of people that are listening, they don't know art talk, like terms for technique and so forth. You'll learn that from the Drafting Table series, because I'm sharing the inner voice that goes on while I create, but I'm sharing my technical approach and what I think are the best techniques and or mediums to tackle this subject with. And like I said, the whole point of the drafting series is to show process and show me preparing. And then the series that will be following this up and be happening once a week will be the execution series, where I film the final of everything that I draft and prepare on Tales from the Drafting Table. Will go into another series where I'm actually hitting the easel or so forth. I need a different kind of camera setup to approach those. And I'll have that in a couple of weeks. And we'll begin the final on this first subject, the Wolverine montage. I'll begin the final. But unlike what I've done in Tales from the Drafting Table, where I've gone segment at a time and tried not to hurry it, the execution one, I'm just gonna A to B. I'm gonna finish it in a single shot, and it won't really be storytelling. There's kind of gonna be something else going on, and I don't want to give too much away. When that series is ready to launch, I'll throw out a trailer for it, because it will definitely technically already be done by the time I'm editing and getting it up and getting it ready. But yeah, from now on Sundays, I'm just going to put a post that kind of gives my schedule as far as works and art projects and where I am on each series that I'm developing. And I'm actually going to be getting back to streaming, game streaming again. I had to go through all this kind of crisis and this medical stuff, and I just couldn't see myself playing games when I was juggling a lot of life challenges. I just felt irresponsible. Some people look for escapism when they run into rough patches. Me, I kind of turn right into that wind and get it over with, and just, one, there's, a lot of things you have to work through, but two, I always am very mindful to learn as much as I can from an experience, especially a bad experience. But I learn from my good experiences too. I like to take time, and that's why I don't actually have a Sunday video series planned right away. I do have one coming for Sunday in the fall, but it's completely different than any of the other types of videos. But the one that's going to go with this, the companion one, is For the Love of Execution. And I am actually currently developing all the key components and aspects of it. So it's something to look forward to, and it's going to be kind of wacky, and it's just my own weird, creative, quirky kind of way. It's best way to put it, it's like merging my two worlds, the real world, physical, I guess what some call the Hylic world, with my kind of inner Sigic world. The two colliding and crashing into each other is what that series is going to feature. So there's going to be some unusual elements, unexpected elements that might not seem like they belong, but to my brain they do belong, and they're kind of funny little anecdotes and additions to the approach to something that to me is just kind of straightforward. I like the idea of what I've written and created as far as how the execution series is planning to work out, because it's like bringing how my mind operates into reality, and to me that's like, it's fun. It's fun. If you think of things like that movie, Being John Malkovich, I like that because, yeah, you immerse yourself in the characters and in the subject deeply, and you leave a bit of yourself inside of the art that you do, especially the original stuff. And like, I can only imagine how much of an actor leaves himself inside of a character and how much of that character stays inside an actor. I do a little bit of kind of theatrical stuff, but it's actually really more of an extension of me, and it's not really a character. It's a time capsule. That's about as much as I'll give away about the elements. I want to have a certain level of surprise to it. Um, but yeah, I'm gearing up to go where I envision the studio going, and it's one series at a time until I get them all steady, and operating and regularly going. So the channel is a lot coming still. We've just barely started the first like keystone series that leads to an entire setup of series that all interplay with each other and play off of each other, if you will. I am switching the format of this though, for sure, or schedule, but I'll save that for Sunday. I'll post my Sunday schedule every day at 8 o'clock on Sundays. All right. Well, all right. Well, that wraps up episode 15 of Tales from the Drafting Table, continuing the color study part of the Wolverine montage, the draft for the final. Looks pretty good. It's a good episode. We're so close now, we will be like honing in on some of the areas that I'm doing the color study so that I can kind of get a better understanding of how I want the background to tie things together. So I appreciate everybody that came by and checked these out and supports it and thumbs up and so forth. It helps a lot with the algorithm, and it just helps the studio. So I appreciate that from everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful morning, wherever you are. And I hope everything you're dreaming of is manifest. All right. Speedy out. See you in the next episode. Bye.